Hello, welcome to Group 3's presentation. Today we are here to ask the question, is student loan debt worth the price? We explore financial difficulties borrowers face in the future. In this presentation, we will go over Section 1, which is a quick introduction of our subject. Section 2, the history of student loans, how it started and where we are now. Section 3, theories that support the idea of borrowing and their limitations. Section 4, empirical research we conducted. And Section 5, limitations and conclusion based on our research. So the authors here today are myself, my name is Annie, theorist is Andrew, and econometrician is Benjamin. Introduction, current state of student loan debt in the United States. So student loan debt in the US stands at approximately 1.77 trillion, impacting nearly 1 out of every 5 adults. This financial burden is extensive, affecting individuals across various income levels, age groups, and educational backgrounds. We find that elevated student loan debt imposes a considerable financial strain on individuals. Graduates are frequently challenged with sizable monthly payments, which can hinder their capacity to achieve other financial objectives, including purchasing a home, securing their retirement, or supporting a family. Our study uses financial well-being as a measurement of stable and healthy financial situation, extending beyond merely possessing a high income or substantial wealth. So a quick history of student loan debt. So the 1944 GI Bill, which is officially called the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, commonly again known as the GI Bill, was a groundbreaking US legislation designed to support veterans returning from World War II. One of its notable provisions was the educational benefits it offered, providing financial assistance for veterans to pursue higher education or vocational training. The 1958 National Defense Education Act was to make higher education more affordable and amp up the system to meet the nation's technological and defense needs. Among its provisions, this law offered grants, scholarships, and educational loans to those majoring in engineering, math, education, science, and foreign languages. This enticed more individuals to sign up for college, thus borrowing more loans. The 1965 Higher Education Act is an important US law that was created to make a difference in how people access and pay for higher education. The main goal of HEA was to help more people go to college by providing financial aid like grants and loans to students who needed help paying for their education. The 2005 Higher Education Act is a comprehensive piece of legislation aimed at enhancing higher access to education, ensuring educational quality, and providing financial assistance to students. The 2000 Pay As You Earn program aims to make student loan repayment more manageable for borrowers by capping monthly payments at 10% of their discretionary income and forgiving any remaining balance after 20 years of qualifying payments. And this is the most recent, the CARES Act of 2020. This relief period, known as the Federal Student Loan Forbearance, initially began in March 2020 and was extended several times, providing borrowers with financial flexibility during uncertain times of the pandemic. Additionally, the CARES Act of COVID-19 ensures that suspended payments were counted as qualifying payments for forgiveness programs and did not negatively impact borrowers' credit scores, regardless of all the legislation passed to assist individuals in gaining a degree in higher education and to combat student loans. It has still become the second highest consumer debt and has surpassed credit card and auto loan debts in the United States.
All
Next
right.
is our theorist, Andrew. Go ahead.
Hello. So my name is Andrew. This is the theoretical study part of the presentation. Next slide. Next slide. So these are the theories that are used in this presentation. We have human capital theory. So Gary Becker's human capital theory views human labor as akin to investing in a manufacturing machine, transforming raw labor into a skilled workforce that enhances their productivity and delivers, delivers more valuable services. And then we have signaling theory, which asserts that individuals signal their potential productivity to employers through educational background, with higher education levels often associated with perceived higher productivity. Next slide. So here we have the human capital theory applied. So in this scholarly journal, How Does Student Debt Affect Early Career Retirement Savings? The authors analyzed retirement assets in an employer subsidized program for 30 years for 30-year-old participants. And those with bachelor's degrees and with student loan debt show significant lower retirement savings at age 30 compared to those without such loans. And the link between student debt and early career retirement savings suggests that loan repayment burdens may cause individuals to prioritize short-term financial obligations over long-term planning. And so college graduates in this situation may perceive additional education as a sunk cost, as the investment in their human capital negatively impacts their future savings. And so here, their future earning potential will greatly decrease as they refrain from any additional training that may cost them their restricted income. And so in this infographic on the side, it's like a human capital like kind of graph. And so as you can see, so when a college graduate and a high schooler, they both start at the same level, sort of, except the high schooler straight out of school, they go into the workforce, and so they're earning more. But then say when the college graduate is at 22 and they just graduated university, there's that little gap of earning where they're probably looking for a job. And then we can see a jump in their earnings after. Next slide. So same thing again. So in this scholarly journal, How Does Unpaid Student Loan Impact Social Security Benefits? The authors suggest that delinquent borrowers face a 2,500 annual reduction in Social Security benefits equivalent to 46% of household income. Graduates missing loan payments risk lower Social Security benefits, impacting their pre-retirement living standards. And then despite human capital theory viewing education as an investment in skills and earning potential, unpaid student loan debt poses a limiting reality. And then the negative effects on assets, earnings, human capital, and Social Security benefits underscores the detriment impact of student loan debt on financial well-being. Next slide. And then so here is our signaling theory applied. So in this article, Human Capital versus Signaling Explanation of Wages, they address information imbalances. Well, signaling theory addresses information imbalances by using education as a proxy for an individual's abilities, and that excessive education may serve as a signal for passionate learning, and companies may require more education than necessary to discourage those who are academically struggling in school. And then students burdened by excessive loans for a bachelor's degree may hinder their ability to save, trying to signal their productivity to employers. And then failure to seek additional education for new positions requirements could cap future earning potentials. And so then they view education mainly as a signal, raises doubts about the link between higher education and economic productivity, posing concerns about the return of investment for individuals with student loan debt and long-term financial planning, including retirement. And so in this small little infographic on the side, we have H, which is the high ability productive person, and then I would be the lower ability productive person. And so the S asterisk would be without a signal, so they don't have a degree. And so the WO is the expected wage of an education without a signal, and then the W would just be the expected wage for an education level or greater than, so the signal. So yeah, the earnings are a lot different. Next slide. So then this would be human capital theory versus signaling theory. So this is saying that both theories underscore the pivotal role of education as an investment in an individual's futures, emphasizing its influence on earning potential and value markets. Additionally, both theories recognize the presence of information asymmetry in the labor market, and they assert that education shapes an individual's access to job opportunities. In essence, they collectively explain that intricate relationship between education and the labor market. Next slide. And so here we have the contrasting sides of the theories. And so human capital theory sees education as an investment that will directly contribute to productivity. Signaling theory views education as an investment in signaling valuable traits and qualities to a potential employer. Human capital theory assumes that the employers can observe and assess an individual's productivity based on their education and skills. But signaling theory, it indicates that education facilitates better sorting in the job market, leading to more suitable matches between individuals and employers. And human capital theory explains the relationship by focusing on the direct impact of education and productivity, but signaling theory explains it through an indirect impact of education by signaling observable traits and qualities. Next slide. And so these are the limitations for the theory. So while human capital theory and signaling theory offer valuable insights into consequences of educational attainment, they also face challenges in explaining the evolving landscape of income distribution, wealth accumulation, and the complex relationship between student loan debt and financial health or well-being. There is no economic theory to account for the diverse outcomes associated with student loan debt. Next slide.
Thank you, Andrew.
Mhm.
Hi, my name is Benjamin, and I am responsible for the empirical study for our project. So some background information is that the data set that we used for our project was the 2019 Survey of Consumer Finances. This survey is conducted by the Federal Reserve. The Survey of Consumer Finances is a triennial statistical survey that is conducted by the Federal Reserve that tracks pensions, income, and other demographic characters of families in the United States. The survey also gathers information on the use of financial institutions. Important variables that we used while conducting our empirical study were PAYDU1 through PAYDU7. This variable measures the dollar amount for monthly student loan payments made monthly. After discussing with the Fed, we asked if we can just combine these 7 PAYDU variables into one, just known as PAYDU. They agreed because, again, they're measuring, you can have up to 6 different student loan payments, monthly student loan payments. So we just condensed it into one variable. Other important variables for our empirical analysis are wage increase, education, income, equity accumulation, home ownership, asset accumulation, debt accumulation, net worth, age, race, and marriage status. Is that these variables measure student loan debt, financial well-being, and economic well-being. And then next slide. So the beginning of our empirical analysis, we constructed distributions for asset accumulations for borrowers and non-borrowers. Looking at this visual representation, we can see that non-borrowers typically have higher valued assets than that of borrowers. Next slide. When we condense it to numbers, we can see again that for non-borrowers, they typically have asset values that are higher than that of borrowers on average. We see that the median value for non-borrowers is higher than that for borrowers. There's a bigger range for non-borrowers' asset values than that of non-borrowers. And something to note is with the sample size is that this mimics what is currently happening in the economy, is that approximately 17.4% or 1 in 5 Americans experience student loan debt. So our sample size is mimicking what's happening as a whole in the United States. Next slide. Another way to show distributions is we're going to be showing box plots. And something to note that's very important is that we are measuring financial well-being with asset accumulation, equity accumulation, net worth, income, savings, and home ownership. We're basing this measurement off of other studies that were conducted by the Federal Reserve. Specifically, the Board of Governors for the Federal Reserve conducts an experiment for the economic well-being for individuals who have student loans. So again, we're using asset accumulation, equity accumulation, net worth, income, savings, and home ownership to measure financial well-being. So for the first 2 box plots, what we should notice is that there's a much bigger distribution for those who do not have student loans. That's going to be our non-borrowers. And as we look at the next 2 box plots, next slide. We see a similar pattern again, that there's a much bigger distribution for those who did not have student loans or are non-borrowers, is that typically they have a higher value net worth, income, asset accumulation, and equity accumulation. And going into our next 2 box plots, we see a similar story with savings. Something to note is that home ownership is that the box plots look very similar. The only thing that I will note is that the averages are different, is that individuals that did not take out student loans are non-borrowers, they are 67.8% likely to become a homeowner, while those who did take out student loans, our borrowers, are only 57.9% likely to become a homeowner. So we see that taking out student loans decreases your home ownership by around 10.6%. Next slide. The next analysis that we'll be doing is a mean comparison test, again, for borrowers and non-borrowers. For our null hypothesis, we are saying that borrowers' financial health is equivalent to non-borrowers' financial health. The alternative hypothesis is that borrowers' financial health is not equivalent to non-borrowers' financial health, and we'll be using a two-sided t-test to do our mean comparison. Next slide. So again, we're doing the t-test for asset accumulation, equity accumulation, net worth, income, savings, and home ownership. And for all of our t-tests, we can conclude that we reject the null hypothesis, is that we look at for the borrower's mean and non-borrower's mean, there's a significant difference amongst asset accumulation, equity accumulation, net worth, and income. And even when we go for savings and home ownership on the next slide, we find this narrative to be similar, is that, again, we reject the null hypothesis that borrowers' home ownership is not the equivalent of non-borrowers' home ownership. And we find that borrowers' saving is not equivalent to non-borrower savings. Typically, non-borrowers having higher savings, home ownership, net worth, income, asset accumulation, and equity accumulation. Next slide. And we wanted to give every opportunity to prove our hypothesis wrong. So what we started doing next was doing the same test, but we started isolating variables. The variables that we isolated were age, race, gender, marriage status, and education level. So for our sample size in this, or for our sample group, we are using 40-year-old white males who are married, who have a bachelor's degree. And as we see that the story still holds true, that non-borrowers typically have higher asset and equity accumulation, they have a higher net worth and savings. The only thing that is interesting that we should note is that for borrowers in this sample size is that every single one of them were a home owner, while non-borrowers, only 81.1% of them were homeowners. So it's surprising that we see that borrowers actually were more likely to have home ownership than that of non-borrowers. Next slide. So after that being said, is that we could see that our hypothesis does hold true, is that there's significant difference between borrowers and non-borrowers' financial well-being. So the next thing that we wanted to do was run regression models and see the effect that student loan has on your financial well-being. The next slide. So we see that we ran regression for, again, asset accumulation, equity accumulation, net worth, savings, income, and home ownership. Something to note is that for all of the coefficients for the PAEDU variable, which again, as we pointed out earlier, is the variable that measures monthly payments for student loans. And we see that for every dollar that increases for student loans, it will decrease your asset accumulation, equity accumulation, net worth, and savings. And also that another thing that we should notice is the significance that it has of student loan debt on your financial well-being, and that is that it's highly significant. Next slide. And we find this to be true for home ownership, that it's highly significant. The only one that is slightly different is student loans debt. It's significant impact on income, and it's only very significant with a significant code with a p-value less than 0.01, but still very significant overall. For the empirical limitations, something that I would just like to point out while working on this project was that it's a huge data set. There are over 340 variables, and our sample size was over 28,000 individuals. So unfortunately, trying to do a in-depth empirical analysis with something this big with only 16 weeks, there's definitely a lot more that I would have loved to conduct, but I still find that what we found in our semester was very meaningful and impactful.
Our conclusion today. So our theoretical conclusion is that the negative association between student loan debt and financial well-being is partially explained by human capital theory. While human capital theory endorses the concept of student loan debt as an investment essential for high productivity, it fails to consider the constraints that such loans impose on retirement planning and accumulation of future assets. Signaling theory, which regards education primarily as a signal to employers, introduces skepticism regarding the correlation between higher education and economic productivity. And to echo what Ben said, our study within the empirical area concludes our hypothesis holds true. Non-borrowers' financial well-being is better than that of borrowers' financial well-being. Overall, non-borrowers' asset and equity accumulation is higher. Non-borrowers' income, net worth, savings, and home ownership are also higher. Limitations of the empirical study were requiring more time to conduct more extensive studies on the issue of student loan debt and its impact on financial well-being. Thank you for taking the time to view our presentation. There are more details within our research and encourage you to read our paper for those findings.